Well,
Oh,
I love this part.
all
I
right.
love this part.
We should be live now on Facebook. Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Third Thursday Hangout. And this is an evolving platform and forum to answer the question, what happens when a creative person and a coach shows up on a call during lunchtime? This is what happens. Creative Cat Sylvia Blalock, your coach Elaine Design, coming at you live on Facebook on the third Thursday of July. It is now I believe, our third Thursday, and yet all year long we've been doing this together. So this time I'm gonna be the sidekick to the driver. I'm just picturing us on that motorcycle with the sidecar. Who's my helmet and cape?
Look at all. What is it? I want to say the Red Baron, but or Snoopy and Charlie
The bird.
Brown, and we are none
Woodstock.
of those. We are none of those. They're both driving. It's like two motorcycles strapped together.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh man. So this is a time where it is July, so I think Sylvia's conversation point is appropriate.
Thank you, Ed. Hey, y'all. Elaine, I'm going to tell you, I've loved these magical moments of us sharing. If any of you who are joining us, hey, how you doing? Elaine and I we have been doing this kind of chat with each other. Hold on, let me make sure I mute my computer before I make this awkward for everyone. Okay. We have been doing this kind of conversation with each other since I want to say 1998, if I got that right.
I'll deny it to your niece and nephew, because that would qualify us as being from old timey days. But yes,
exactly. And what we learned is that we will really chew on a conversation. So I want to introduce that by saying we're not just two chicks who are just talking on the internet. We were coworkers in a year, and and she became my sister-in-law in 2005. And there are no cue cards here. I'm actually trying to remember what their anniversary looks like when she married my brother. And the cute kids came out of it, Pooh Bear stories, lots of stuff. But someone who could really speak candidly and frankly, and sometimes be that boot in the butt you need to get moving, turned out that she wasn't just coaching me, she's coaching everybody and not getting paid for it. So, you know, as her sister, that's like, oh, no. We cannot have that. And she determined that her life work she's actually been doing all along. And there's few people can say that they found their calling early and did it, whether it made money or not, whether it made sense or not, and learned the lessons they needed to learn from their life calling as they did it for other people and did it for themselves, and then let it work through them for them. She is such an example of that. So, Elaine Dezan, your coach, Ed. The links are through everything.
What an introduction. And now I got to pay it forward here. So, Sylvia Blalock. I met Sylvia in Oakland, and on the 10th floor of a building called Rep Heaven, and it was because we had a great view of Lake Merritt. Man, I'm just having memories of the juice joint, Burrito Gordo, Primo's across the street for the coffee, and let me not forget the wonderful Thai place that was by Long's for some strange reason, La Cheval. But since that moment, I just had a different experience interacting with people, because even in an environment that could be dry and canned and scripted, Sylvia just had a propensity to make it fun and creative and show up in an authentic way to your peer group and to customers. And so I think her work with creating that customer connection is outstanding and stellar. And the way she frames it as a poetic exercise, as an exercise that you can inject your person, your agency, and taking that connection you build past that relationship into other areas of your life and really live a true, vibrant way, showing people you love them, that you love them in ways that are intense, unique, and just really full of that capacity to love. And in her capacity to love me as a sister over the years, it's been a safe place to land to talk about the fearsome moments that I had and work through the challenges to get to those candid and courageous conversations that I so champion for others to have, to heal relationships, to heal fractures that you have with your own process of making something you're thinking happen in reality, and really just do that self-inquiry and awareness, because without that, nothing else can happen. Because I've learned that, because with her own work inside, the beautiful poetry, the beautiful writing, the beautiful graphics, the beautiful voice when she sings, that's all a culmination of all the inner work she's done over the years. So that is my sister in love, Sylvia Blalock, CEO of Queendom Networks.
Yay! Thank you. We decided, what? My sister-in-law decided that I was going to steer today. My sister in love. So we are both sisters-in-law, sisters in love. And the topic that I chose for my steering situation is, what is freedom? And I
And if we
wanted
could
to,
cue the George Michael song right now, we would, just so
you
you know.
know, were we in a licensing situation, that'd have been my pick. That would have been my pick. And we're like there on that. What is freedom is so loaded. It's so loaded. I sent you the PowerPoint in case I need to share it, but I want to, without making this, hi, welcome to my TED Talk, I take a minute to pull back from all the vitriol and the rhetoric that is surrounding the word and the concept of freedom. What does it look like for you? The good thing about something like freedom, no one can define it for you. No one can define it for you. There is captivity and there is freedom. So I'm going to start by just putting out there the simple question to you, Elaine. What does freedom look like to you?
So, because I just wanted to be just a little prepared for today, I did find a quote that I think helps me define freedom for me. And it is, freedom is the oxygen of the soul. Mm. And it's from, I might be mispronouncing his name, so I apologize in advance. It's from Moshe Dayan. And it's something you could Google and find. I think we all Google quotes for different reasons. But for today, it was definitely thinking freedom for me is that breath that I could take. And in my coaching practice, pausing and reflecting is a very important component of that inquiry and developing that awareness. And when I think of freedom as being that oxygen, that intake of that breath, and how it feeds my soul and my being, that's the freedom to me that helps me define that opportunity to decide the next thing that I do and informs the next choice that I make.
I love that. I love that. I wanted to, see, and it's, see how just intimate that is, that no one else is going to slice it quite like that, because it is really quite that way. Merriam and Webster would like us to understand that the absence of necessity, coercion, or constraint in choice or action is the 1A definition of freedom. Now, I say 1A because there's a 1A through H, and there's a 2, and God help you if you look up free, because there's about 11 or 12 of those. To make it as plain as possible, the absence of necessity, coercion, or constraint in choice or action is what freedom is. For yourself, your everyday today is going to require that you do things that maybe you don't want to do, that I'm going to go out on a limb and say you feel you have to do, when in fact it's not really that you have to, because you cannot do it. You just need to be willing to accept the consequences of not doing it. It's just like law. We should obey the law because the law is the law. We can, in our person, not obey the law. But you got to be prepared to go to jail, do some bad things, have some things happen to you if you don't agree. Mm-hmm. So it's not that you're not free, you have agreed to be bound by the law, by popular opinion, and by different things. Well, law is a big chunk to explain it, but pulling even off of something quite so serious and thinking about what freedom means, if I was absent of necessity, coercion, and constraint in my personal choices and my personal actions, what it would look like might be financial freedom. It might be freedom from my own fear. What is holding me and constraining me is the thing that I compare my freedom, that I judge my freedom on. I very gently say, if you were to ask the slave, freedom depends on who owns me. Freedom depends on what holds you. Wow. That is how freedom looks depends on how what binds you looks. Exactly that. Okay, so we marinate on that, right?
Yeah, that's a moment. Okay. That's a moment. Like we think of you can go on a deeper level because of the experience, right? And that's where I always have to take a moment and be very thoughtful, because that's a history that impacts your niece and nephew that I can't deliver. I can, and it's as sometimes, right? It's just words, mommy. But when it's coming from someone else, from a place of ancestry, from a place of deep ties to cultural and historical research that I know you've been doing to understand where we come from. Like when you're designing this family tree and those limbs of your niece and nephew, you're tracing those limbs all the way back. And when you mention what you mentioned, that power of that moment, of that freedom and who owns you, that just really slices through something that I would never think of. And if I did think of it, I don't think I could ever inject the potency of that statement the way you did.
Oh, no, I'm holding that. I think that sometimes, without meaning to, we say things so flippantly. Oh, we're a slave, blah, blah, blah. And on you go. And then it has an impact. My next question on that is something I learned from you in January, where you just blew my mind. You asked me what was I willing to do to be a better leader on January 11th, 2021. And I submit, if you are questioning what is freedom, what are you willing to escape to feel free? If you are in fact bound, fettered, tethered as it were, what would you break the bond of? What would you escape from? And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I fired my job. That's how it's put. I gave a 6 weeks notice. I documented every part of the process, and I left my job. I left my job. And what I found out about that was that I really know more than I give myself credit for, and was doing it for one thing. I had saved up, got the credit, did the things. I freed myself from my job. I have to take responsibility for how that impacts me financially, or I need to make more money, or I need to implement all those things I said I was going to do. You are freeing yourself from what held you back. But does that now mean, let's do a Julie Andrews in the fields because we're free, yay? Not exactly. There was a quote that I used. I wasn't planning on saying it right now, but it was a quote from Maya Angelou regarding freedom that actually struck a nerve, because what she was saying was that when you are trying to be free, when you are fighting for your freedom, it's an everyday, all day thing. And when you do it and you get up tomorrow, you're going to be doing it again. Not because it's a struggle necessarily, but because freedom is not something that just is if you are not free. It is something that you enact, that you become, and that you maintain, that you do freedom. You do the freedom thing all the time. It's like trying to be a good Christian or be a good Muslim, or there is no hooray, you got there, you've done it. And if you understand going in that freedom is a consistent thing, you can stop, and enjoying your freedom is part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
Why do it if you're just working at it all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Being free and becoming free are collaborative things in which at some point you actually make yourself able to be the free that you thought you were not. I will read the quote in a little bit, but I was wrapping my head around when you see the quote, it's also in the promo. It seems so harsh because it's like, was he doing this forever? But the reality is, just like working at getting better, being better and staying better is something that you maintain. There's a maintenance to it that is a positive spin of doing it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say that I am free right now and I don't want to go, I don't do a whole lot of outdoors. Okay, you're sort of free in your little cage, but are you?
Mm-hmm.
I am free in my spirit in that I can walk out this door and decide to change course and follow that course wherever it leads me. That is a level of freedom that borders on fearless recklessness. And yet,
Mhm.
nothing has fallen. Feeling's still up there. Everything seems to be going. So yeah, that's where I came when it came to what are you willing to escape? Do you find, Elaine, that when you think of having freedom and having to save it from something else, that there is something that prevents you from being free?
As you're bringing this up, it's an interesting idea that you're creating here and proposing that freedom can have an energy to it. And this force of freedom that potentially exists. And I think you're hitting on some points here, because to have freedom means you get to do things. And even though you have the potential to do things, having that freedom, being free to do it, is a different thing. So now we're testing this idea of that willingness to go into that potential opportunity in this environment that allows for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think for me, I was I think of this, my dad joining the military, right, to give us a better life in America. So I have more freedom, and freedom meant go to school, go get your education. So you could create this kind of life that people from the Philippines imagined back in the 70s for their children and stuff. And so with that idea of freedom, and that I have all these opportunities on the mainland versus the motherland, I was free to do it. And also I felt like, yeah, I better do it. Like it was an obligatory thing. And the freedom I truly felt growing up was when I was a drummer. Like, it wasn't about college, really. This is what I really wanted to do. I wanted to be a mortician because it was job security, and I wanted to play drums. Like that's what was my high school plan. And my dad was like, no, you could aim a little higher if you want and do something else. You could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be a nurse. I'm like, no,
Being a mortician.
that takes art. That's creative.
People die every day.
It's
That's
like
job security.
But so I think when you propose this idea, I really am seeing it, and I'm seeing it with children, right? As a child, you are unfettered from responsibility. And then when responsibility starts showing up, the bind starts happening. You start feeling this tightening of your life towards responsibilities you weren't expecting. You hear about it, but then when it's like, oh, there are consequences because I didn't do something. What do you mean I don't get allowance? You're effing with my freedom, Mom. Am I? And so
all in my biz.
So I think that, being in a position where I could start really observing that, and I'm noticing it as you described it, because when you're younger, you have the freedom to play, but there's all these freedoms because you have to physically grow, you have to mentally grow as a kid, and you're growing, and then all of a sudden there's a shift where my growth is feeling just a bit stifled, and I was not anticipating that.
You just really put a fine point on that for me. I did, in fact, want to go ahead and say that when Maya was asked in a conversation about freedom and identity, I suppose, in a conversation in the early 1970s, 72, she was speaking to Bill Moyer. She said that fighting for one's freedom or struggling towards being free is like struggling to be a poet or a good Christian or a good Jew or a good Muslim or a good Zen Buddhist. You work all day long and achieve some kind of level of success by nightfall, go to sleep, wake up in the next morning with the job still to be done. So you start all over again. There is no emphatic about that. It is so stated so simply and succinctly that that is what it is. That is what it is. It isn't a entitlement. The fact that there is an absence of the entitlement story to what she is saying every time she talks about freedom, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness is actually what we're allegedly entitled to. But it is self-evident that from your head to your toe, you are an independent body, not attached to your parent or, so you are free. And that to some, the idea of freedom isn't a thing that is separate from anything. You are free. It is you. It's why this statement is really one of the most understated things she's ever said, I think, because you just get up and you do it, and you do it every day, because it's like breathing. It's
right.
The doing of free things is what you do. And when you're a child and don't realize that what you are born into is something that you must continue to cultivate, comes as a shock when you're a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And you fight against anything that tries to take that childhood freedom from you, while at the same time wanting the perks that come with responsibility, like agency,
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I say teenager politely because some of us adults may have taken a long time to get that whole agency thing together. I don't know. But yeah, I was fortunate enough to write a piece that I'm not going to share this time, but I wrote it for Juneteenth because the subject of freedom came up very strongly with that topic. And the history of what that actually meant, when did it, has it yet happened, made people say, okay, if we were freed, then that means we're free now, right? And there are so many people who don't feel free that questioning Juneteenth has so much to do with, yeah, but we're not free because we can't do this and we can't do this and we can't do that, which are true statements. But also, you don't understand the concept of freedom on a macro concept if you don't understand the concept of individual freedom, personal
Mm-hmm.
freedom. If you have been ever incarcerated, because what the fine print of that was, unless you're being punished, bad people. When you are not feeling free in your life, and you believe that, you believe you don't feel free because you're being punished. When in fact, you are the one that determines whether or not you're going to agree with what isn't keeping you free in your mind, in your life. Unless someone actually puts you in prison, you can agree not to be contained by what makes you feel not free. That's something you can do. And you can do it in small pieces all the time. We'll get there though. All right. Where are we at with this?
Where are we at with this? What slide you want me to be on?
What makes you free?
Ooh, what makes you free? I think what helps me define that to answer that question, when I can understand what's most meaningful to me and the ability to chase after it, I feel is what makes me free. I hold my responsibilities and commitments and deliverables as things that allow me to do the things that I want to do. And I have the freedom to do those things that are most meaningful to me. So when I am with my family, when I'm writing, when I'm running, when I'm in conversation and creating connection, that to me is what makes me free, because I don't have these boundaries or these restrictions to be engaged with my children, to pick up the phone and call people I want to talk to. I have the I have the freedom, and this is calling back to June, right? I have the freedom to define what is time bound, time collaborative, those things. Like I could shift, I could move things around, I could make things happen because of that freedom to do so. And if I ever were to think about, okay, what does not make me free? What hinders me? I think for when I just look back, whenever I felt an obstruction to my success, it was always me. It could be assigned to somebody else. It could be assigned to a situation. I could always pivot to that happened or this person or whatever. But the choice, that freedom to choose, that oxygen intake, to pause and think, what could I do instead of this? What options are available to me that I could execute and put into play to improve this? It always boiled down to me, for sure. I could have sat in grief from 13 past 26 if I didn't make the choice to call for somebody to help me manage my grief in a better way. I could have held on to the survivor's guilt of surviving that accident and living instead of dying so my mom could live. But I was able to shed and heal from surviving that accident because my dad was so gracious and saying that was a choice it was never mine to make. He would die. I could look at my problems in my relationships because of those instances, right? I could have held on to those feelings of abandonment, that people I love will leave me, because they always do. And always do means because my mom died, but I assigned it to this broad category of everyone leaving me. And I could have sat there. I could have sat in this idea that I'm a cog in a corporate engine, instead of thinking, man, could I possibly do something different with my career and connect with people and create a culture of value contribution and really be grateful for people who surround me and inspire me? So whenever I think of what makes me free, it's all of those choices that, in my, old-timey way, as I would describe, those choices always led to a cool outcome.
And look at the you that we got. Yay. I think that I have celebrated being free from a very young age. I thought that teaching me how to do housework was trying to make me be a domestic. So, and was not ashamed to say, you are not going to make a domestic out of me. I tell you what, I'm going to hire people to do all this stuff. And that's one way of looking at your freedom to do and be who you want to be. But I think what really is a hallmark of my personal freedom is fearlessness and doing things without fear. It's not that I have ever been fearless. It is that I am likely to do things whether or not I am afraid. And I weigh that. Some fears override others, But when I can do things with a sense of fearlessness, I am free. When I'm able, not that I even want to, but that I can, there's a freedom in being able to do things. And that is freedom. Being solvent. People do not speak enough about debt and how you can be bound by who and what you owe. No matter how far you get, I carried that as my own burden, that for as long as I am in debt to companies and people, that I'm not free. And that I will not be until I am not in debt. Personal choice, but it is how people gauge whether or not they're free. Independence. You can make decisions without having to weigh the feelings and needs of anyone else. Or you weigh those things with your own because they are your own. If you are a mother, a spouse, this independence does not mean without others. It means without other considerations. And your family is you. So the choices that you make for the benefit of you and them is an independent of outside contributions or considerations. An agency. Do I own the right to make those choices for myself? I don't know. Are you your head of household? Are you the person who makes those decisions? Do you have the agency to do that? So much of what freedom means to people, those 5 things are the secret, I don't know if I'm free if I don't have those things. And if you think about what they are, can you do it? Are you doing it without having to also deal with the fear, the stress, the anxiety? Are you financially in a place to do whatever you'd like to do? Can you do it without outside contribution, input, or say so? And are you the decider? And that, I think, are some of the building blocks. Although I welcome anyone that wants to comment up and tell us more. What makes you free? Put that in the comments. And I don't care if this is 2026 when you see this. Put it in the comments.
There you go. Man. No, I love how you're tethering this onto the financial freedom piece because you know, I did a book study, The Energy of Money, in May, and it is such a important energy one brings. And one of the quotes in the book is, "How you do money is how you do life." And as you were unpacking those factors of agency, owning the right to make these decisions, and how you independently do things and how you seek support to do things, and really putting in this posture of courage over fear, you know, because you talked about what makes you free is this fearlessness. And I would submit that there's a component there that is very Brene Brown. You know, you are choosing courage over fear. And even in the environment of fearlessness and or being fearful of what could possibly happen, the courage to even consider it, to inspect it, is the real power that you're talking about in that idea of agency. Because you, even before you get to the right of like thinking about your debt or thinking about your money, that right to just even consider the possibility of all the options before you and being free to make that choice, that's courage over fear each and every single time.
I would like to share my screen.
Passing the ball to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna get that. Enable it.
Well, I'm just gonna make you a co-host already.
Bad, I'll drive. I tell you, freedom is such a scary and big, broad topic that being able to speak to it without here we go. Yay. Okay. Okay, are we seeing it?
Yes.
Cool. Being able to speak to it and speak to it in that way that isn't taking away from what others are trying to, okay, what? Okay. In a way that doesn't take away from other people's experiences of it. It's truly, it's a scary thing, but you can't really talk about being free without talking about what binds you. And so we are dipping our toe into that, leaving it open for people to say what holds them back. Because here is the problem that I have experienced. You do not want to mistake identifying what holds you back for excuses and for the things we lean on. You know, I am not trying to give my enablers a book on how to help be codependent with me, but there are things that keep you feeling like you are not free. That, well, here you go. Programming can make you think you're not free. Someone, you know, over time, you start thinking, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm this or I'm that. And so you don't know that you are more than you are. You just are set up to believe that. And if you walk that pattern, you don't know you're in a pattern because it's all you know. Breaking that pattern helps you realize that there is so much more to you and the world and life than you realize. So don't discount programming. Just don't say, haha, this is the thing, and then stop. Okay, well, now we've got it. I'm going to go find my tea and be done, right? This is an ugly one. Ugly. If you are unfamiliar with imposter syndrome, there are people who are high performers or who are people pleasers in particular, who suffer from the belief that people are going to find out they're not as good as they think they are, or they say they are, or other people think they are, and that they stay not, they will not fail. They won't try a thing because they don't want to fail, or because they don't want people to find out they're imposters. It's a syndrome. It's not that they really are imposters at all. It is that, just like survivor's guilt suggests that the person who has passed is shaming you in some way, or that there is shame that you are entitled to for not having a bad thing happen to you. That is a syndrome. It is, and it's, think of dysmorphia as a syndrome. There are things that we think that are like our brain folding in on itself in that reverse dark origami way, that you unfolding stuff that is just not supposed to be there at all. And you've got fake paper cranes flying out of your brain. Imposter syndrome is when you believe that you are a fake at what you are good at, and that if you do what you're good at, people will find out you're not good at it. Address that, y'all. Lack of confidence, lack of support, and inability are three things. I will say lack, because to me, there is something to be said for lack politics, is how I put it. In fact, I one of those bullets on my actual list, I wrote lack of confidence, lack of patience, lack of opportunity, lack of motivation, lack. And what that is meant to say truly is the belief that you're not enough, the belief that if you ask, people won't help you, or you are trying to base your freedom on something you cannot do. Inability truly is you are unable to do the thing that makes you free. Addressing why your freedom is based on something that is outside your abilities is also a mental thing. Whether you are actually disabled, whether you are incarcerated, whether you are tied up to a bed somewhere in a basement, however dark, and I am not making light of kidnapping, however you address the inability to do the thing, you must step back even further and say, I cannot base my freedom on what I cannot control. So how can I create a space of freedom within this thing that is out of my control?
Mm-hmm.
That truly sticks to something else. We'll get there. That Maya Angelou said about freedom, something else, right? But Elaine, on what holds you back, would you say any of these is something that you have had to consider?
Well, yeah, I think, it's, I think the programming thing, like it's this idea that of what you can or cannot do based on other feedback or other perspectives. Um, like there was a time where uh, girls aren't drummers. What? What does that mean?
Sheila E. disagrees.
Right. And it was, it's uncommon at the time, but now I feel it's quite common. But I think where there are instances where people are trying to break through, change the dynamic, there's always that question of why you should be doing this, or okay, how the heck can a barely 5-foot person be a drum major when traditionally drum majors are quite tall people, right? And having the opportunity to be a drum major was for me like a little shocking, but I got to do it. And here I am in Philly with my cape and furry tall hat and my mace right in the front, and realizing that height had nothing to do with being a drum major as long as I threw that thing really high and people could see where we're going.
Make it work for you.
Yeah, and so I think, what out of this list, what's held me back was these ideas that people would prescribe to me, and sometimes that I would subscribe to, because to fight against it or to challenge it took energy I was not willing to expend, because I had some other things I wanted to do. And maybe part of that was fear. Maybe part of it was just it's going to be a lot, and so you search out freedom in other ways.
Truth.
And I love what you said, and I love what you said. Like, if you are, we're not making light of anything, because everybody goes through challenges. There's a whole landscape of freedom being taken away. But when you read books where things were taken away, the inspiring stories always emanate from this source of finding freedom somewhere, somehow, on a level that I couldn't understand without hearing, reading, or seeing that experience from another perspective.
Mhm. Same, same, same. I, uh, we'll talk about this in a second because this is the whole thing. I found that being a weirdo, being a weirdo and being someone who wants to do what I want to do and doing that and paying the consequences for not being smart about that and separating that fearlessness and freedom from the freedom of making sound decisions to my benefit so that all of my decisions are not to make a point. It's not just to see. I have the freedom to make decisions that are to my good, and I am free from the opinions of others. I am free from the shame of others. I am free from the imposition of others. When you do that, and you say, I don't want to hear what you have to say because I am free. Mr. Lincoln said so. Ha. Well, be careful that you don't confuse freedom and agency. You are able to do these things. You are not free to do these things. Being able to, and I'm grown in these things, means, yeah, you could, and you are probably able to do them, but the repercussions are so self-damaging that they are not considered logical choices, even if you can do them. Welcome to our conversation about financial freedom. No one is going to say they have financial freedom, even if they're gazillionaires. Ask Orange Julius. You may think you're free, but try to grift someone. Financial freedom looks different to different people. It comes to you as the freedom to do whatever I want with my money, or the ability to have a secure and safe life. Not necessarily travel everywhere, not necessarily do all these things. Financial freedom can simply mean all my bills are paid, my credit is good, and I can make decisions to my own good without worrying about finances. And the complications around financial freedom is that there are so many things set up for you not to be financially free. There is nothing in the Constitution that says financially free. Trust. So before you can really stick a fine point on having it or being it, you would have to at least envision in your mind, what would financial freedom feel like? What does it feel like to open your emails and know that all those things from all your bill collectors are just those, hi, your automatic payment went through. Hi, your automatic payment went through. You would be very surprised if you got an email from your bank, because why? What would that feel like to you? You?
It took, I was on a road, man. Like, I think the housing market for many of us put us in a situation where we had to do some assessments with our finances to buy. And depending on the kind of loan you were sold, to refinance. being given some faulty advice on how to do it, and then recovering from that faulty effort. And so, you know, after going through some pain to restructure debt and things like that, financial freedom now is just having that energy to fund the things that create stories that my children would remember me by, you know, being able to have experiences and not things. And that to me is, you know, the financial freedom of things that I find is this energy component that I throw into opportunities that give my family a chance to be together, to help stand up other businesses, support other female-owned businesses, to invest in an ad space for your internet radio shows to promote you, because it's so important that a diversity of voices exist, and for creatives to have a place to collaborate and do what, you know, we do here once a month, and you have the show that creates space often and with a frequency to build trust with people who would need that network of support to be creative, to have that agency, to be free, test, trial words and things that are poetic to them, but how poetic is it to audiences? You know, I think that to me is my financial freedom, is that ability to move this energy around.
The term have more experiences than things I got from you. And I've shamelessly said it, to be able to gift experiences, not stuff. To, I think last year, year before last, the financial freedom to see concerts. I missed them terribly, but the previous years, I missed them so much. I've been working up until I left my job last year, a lot of 18-hour days, a lot of 6-day work weeks. And I wasn't feeling, I felt like all I was doing was working, come home, working, come home. And it was nice that all my bills were paid and everything was caught up and my credit was going up. And as a person who has no children, no house, I have a lovely cat who's sleeping on my bed, that was financial freedom to me. And so I went to see jazz at Yoshi's. I went to the Greek. I was at the Concord Pavilion and various small and large venues taking in live music, live spoken word poetry, 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 poetry. Getting to go to Poetry Fest, getting to go to New York to see Chic with Niles Rodgers and Chic were playing with another artist that escapes me. Oh, Duran Duran. And going with my girlfriends to see Chic and Duran Duran at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. That was life. And being able to be that kind of an event or entertainment to someone is what financial freedom is looking for me now. Being able to bet everything in my life on being someone that delivers these deliverables, this stuff, and not, hey, I got you another widget, what you call it, and I'm putting Amazon on the map, baby. I'm making my cat some kind of castle out of Amazon boxes. Getting out of that set of mind came specifically from being coached and loved by a coach who speaks to the fact that you don't have to get the things. We certainly don't need them. She was like, look, if that's a stuffed animal, you're going to need to keep that because we are not doing that here. No. So I have a giant stuffed rabbit in my living room because one more Easter bunny from Auntie Sil was more than that room could take. And being able to have the financial freedom yourself to not want or need any of that giving it away, and be able to say, we'd like to experience you more than we need anything from you. That, and then being someone who can accept that information and have the financial freedom to say that your time is worth
Mm-hmm.
more than anything you could give them. That is a goal that, if you start seeing that, it feels like not having clutter, but
Yep.
having a lot of good memories and a whole lot of pictures.
Yep.
Okay, we are going to take a quick check. She's going to come back to see this and laugh. But I stick by freedom ain't free if everybody can't get some. Now, I chose
Love
this
this quote.
picture. Yeah, and that quote is from me. I've been saying it for, oh my gosh.
Gosh, I think God since 1990.
I've been saying it for so long. There's like two quotes that you can definitely say. Sylvia Blalock said that, and they're also my book, Uprising, a Book of Poetry. This is one. And if you are on the right path, the road will rise to meet your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I chose the skydiving picture because a friend who has since passed away, God bless you, Barry Hughes, invited us for his 60th birthday to go skydiving. Actually, he invited me to go skydiving. I thought it was such a cool idea. I told Elaine and my brother and my mom and Cynthia Timberlake. Wait, am I getting that right?
Yeah, Cynthia Timberlake was our tubmate. Yep.
Yep. And we all went skydiving, tandem, not like this, but with people strapped to you.
Mm-hmm.
And to jump out of a perfectly functioning, fairly rickety, with stickers, airplane out into the world and trust that your parachute was going to work, or his was, that you would not hit the ground hard unless you really wanted to, Rashid. And that freedom of being untethered from anything, earth or sky, I will never forget the feeling of falling with no net, and understanding that at this point, my life is out of my hands.
Ooh, that is fact.
My life is out of my hands. When I tell you that a giant airplane can become very small, really fast, trust me that when you are falling and you are facing up and it is shrinking, and then you're like, as you turn around and the wind flows through your rather large nostrils, and you realize just how untethered you are. Walking through the world that way is fun. But if there are people around you who cannot get there, then you're actually walking the little bit of freedom you've got until everybody is there, or else someone will be trying to be where you are or take it from you.
Mm.
Freedom ain't free if everybody can't get some.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that I live in, is that just when I start thinking, ooh, I'm free, I can do, no, I'm not there yet, because I know that I may not be able to save everyone, but there are people that I know my real financial freedom is tied into some things I need to make sure are in place. And so it's really not there until it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a freedom of choice. You can choose to stay bound to something until you can make sure that your freedom says that there is a jar for me, there's a jar for my future, and there's a jar to give away.
Mm-hmm.
And those things are in place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how some take it. Your thoughts?
Well, I just, I haven't thought about our skydiving escapade in a long time. And I love how you're putting it in front of me today in this capacity around freedom, because there is no other feeling quite like just taking that ultimate chance, that adrenaline rush, and hoping that all is well with the gear, with your tandem partner, with your ability to pull that cord when it's time and have the wherewithal to take the chair posture to land on your feet once you're coming up on the ground. And when you're falling, and I think it's the feeling I get when I'm running, where when you're just moving through life very focused in a flow because everything else has been cared for. And even if it isn't cared for to your satisfaction or your idea of quote unquote perfection, the freedom to just leave it all behind and move forward or do a task in that mode of full, absorbed, immersed focus, that kind of freedom is pretty incredible. And so if people don't have that experience, don't have the opportunity to experience that, then I can agree with what you're saying here. Freedom ain't free if everybody can't get some, because, you know, one of the things that your brother has helped me understand, that the generational wealth that has enabled that creativity, that freedom to really find and search yourself and things like that, that's not afforded to everybody. So when your basic care needs aren't cared for, how can you ever really arrive at a place of thriving and flourishing where you are in immersed, fully focused mode? You can't.
Truth, truth. It is an ongoing and wonderful lesson and joyful, juicy experiencing to not carry that whole bag of why you can't, why you're bound, and release on it and say, okay, yep, that happened. And I'm feeling pretty doggone free right now.
Mm-hmm.
Although I probably won't be jumping out of any airplanes anytime soon.
Right, right.
Welp. I chose the coffee because if you know me and Elaine, this is us. This is us. We both, between Panera and Starbucks, we're real good for getting our sit downs on and being able to be our own people while being with each other and being true. My takeaways on how we manifest freedom have everything to do with how we see ourselves in deserving it. And how we see ourselves in the world. No one owes me freedom. To presume that there is some mysterious someone out there that is going to give me free suggests some things that are not true, because I am not enslaved. I am not bound except by my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And manifesting freedom has to do with living outside of the box, living outside of it. How would you say you best manifest freedom, Elaine?
What a question.
I've even got the cauldron of clouds to help you.
I know. It's like, let me summon up a good definition that is a clear display or demonstration of freedom for me. I think writing has been a very important component to me manifesting freedom over the last year. I'm currently working on my book that takes you through a journey of 34 years of annual letters that I write to my mom, who has since left. And it's a combination of a lot of nonfiction from past journal writing with fiction to tie along a grand story together, because it'll always be around my mom's birthday, which would be around September 29th, till the day she passed, which would be October 10th, from 1988 till this past year, where for 37 years I've lived without her. And that freedom to really explore and consider all those years of where I was really focused on what she missed, and realizing all along she never missed a damn thing.
There you go. That's the fact of it. Uh, uh, okay, she just touched me in the feelies, y'all. I think that especially with you, manifesting your freedom reflects so highly in what you want your kids to experience and what you have, through extension, allowed me to experience. I started a company in March. Didn't have all the I's dotted, but I knew the direction I was going. I set up a either virtual or hybrid conference in September. Looks like it's going to be virtual because the venues are that the two venues that were like for sure are shutting back down. And my thought was hosting a conference that best showcases what I do. I mean, I should have had this thing full of poetry, but the reality is this is not a poetry show. I speak in poetry, I believe. And if you speak, the poetry in your words comes through. But voicesthatcarry.org is an actual conference with workshops and poetry. And it is coming together as slowly as these things do, with me saying, I'm not an imposter. I may not be rich, but I absolutely am financially well enough to make sure this happens, or I will make sure I am.
Mm-hmm.
And doing everything I can to support it happening. Mm-hmm. www.queendom.network is in fact the Queendom Networks site. And what we're going to be doing is how I am manifesting freedom. One of the key components to starting this business is so full circle, it's ridiculous. And that is to actually open a call center. Simple enough, but not. A lot more legal stuff than I thought I was gonna have to do. And I've manifested someone who's gonna help me with that. But being able to teach communication, to be able to both show the art of communication and the business of communication from the same place is my goal in life. And I have decided, come hell or high water, that is what I'm going to do. Manifesting freedom takes a fearlessness. It takes a humility. It takes having your hat out begging. And sometimes it takes spending smart and investing smart. But it takes you doing it. Not saying, how do we do it? And then show you pictures of clouds and doing nothing. It takes doing it. Mm-hmm. And investing everything into it. When it lasts, it was suggested, maybe you're going to need a more professional hairstyle because you're going to need to get a job to pay some bills while you do this. Gosh, I hope they like it shaved. Because no, we're not trying to bind ourselves to something to manifest freedom. No, there is a path straight to it that encourages and enforces the freedom that I have bought for myself and that I continue to pay for. Figure out how you're going to manifest freedom in your life. We are so over the overs, it is ridiculous. Let me peek at the oi. Final thoughts, you.
I just really enjoyed this conversation talking about freedom. I think in July, it's a very appropriate topic. And I think that breath, I never really considered how that breath of oxygen was freedom. And it just gave me pause to consider that I'm very, very blessed and I'm very grateful. And if you have a constraint or something hindering you, allow this ear hustle to help you unpack that and look at those programming, imposter syndrome, lack, and inability to inform the next question, what's really binding me, and thinking about how that is hindering you, and is it really hindering you or not, and just take the appropriate steps to find the support, the ear, and that courage to choose a choice that's just going to lead you to down a path of fulfillment and enjoyment towards, because I think my final thing is there's freedom. To have it is to do it.
That's it. That's it. Uh, uh, Thank you so much, my sister Elaine. Thank you, everybody who checked us out, and those who are going to check us out a little later, because I know you're going to want to see what we just said. I have a show coming out Monday. My book is Uprising, a Book of Poetry. So, Amazon, if you want it signed, PayPal your girl. Always good. And that's it.
That's it. And we'll be back next month on the third Thursday of August. So thank you for watching. Happy Friday Eve, y'all.
Happy Friday Eve, y'all. Bye.
Bye.